Hey there, travelers. Want something to sink your teeth into in between episodes? Then why not check out the new book by T.W. Grim, Bonesaw Vic's Cryptozoological Gardens. What the heck is a cryptid, you ask? Well, the simplified answer is cryptids are mythological creatures that may or may not exist, and cryptozoology is the study of these probably not real creatures. Well, for the sake of argument, let's say these mystical creatures are actually real. What if some ruthless and totally legitimate businessman somehow managed to acquire a number of these cryptids for the purpose of putting them on display? For a very large admittance fee, of course. A fee so large, only the wealthiest people would ever know about it. A zoo, in other words. A top secret zoo for the elite. And what if this zoo for cryptids had a job opening? Bonesaw Vic's Cryptozoological Gardens is an off-the-wall journey into the world of supernatural beings and organized crime. It's also a tale about growing up and finding yourself. Inside these pages, you'll join our unwitting protagonist as he encounters stoic ex-mercenaries, dangerous gangsters, and a boatload of mystical monsters with a lot of personality. It's funny, it's horrific, it's dramatic, it's a bit stupid, and it's a lot of things. Above all, Bonesaw Vic's Cryptozoological Gardens is a one-of-a-kind experience. And let me tell you, travelers, it's something that you won't want to miss. It's quite the page-turner. I really enjoyed reading it, and I know you will too. This podcast contains adult content and themes. For a full list of our content warnings, please see our show notes. Listener discretion is advised.
When the fears have taken their toll, when the demons have got up control, when the shadows just won't leave you alone, I'll be there. When your rainbows have turned into black, when the sun has turned its back, when all of your power let itself dry, I'll be
Welcome, my dear, dear traveler, to the Morbid Forest. Greetings, dear, well, travelers. So many lost souls to shepherd today. Normally, I'd introduce myself, and then I'd take you on your appointed path. However, you lot have been quite the handful in your previous life. No. I'll hear none of that. There are no rewards within the forest for 10 little scumbags.
Every story has to start somewhere. And this one begins with the doorbell ring at a house party. This isn't an ordinary house party, however, not by a long shot. There was a lot of talk floating around about options and distribution rights, setups and screenplays. Some of the guests would look very familiar to the general public. The rest of them were responsible for the rising fame of their on-screen counterparts. No, this is definitely no ordinary gathering in any ordinary home. This is a Hollywood party. Most of the attendees are notable players in the film industry, and the location is a luxury condo in an exclusive neighborhood. Although some of them came from relatively humble beginnings, all of the partygoers are now quite wealthy. Most of them are notable figures in the highly competitive world of television and feature films. Their current existence is encased in a wondrous bubble of splendor and comfort. The average person can hardly imagine what it would be like to live among them, to move in their circle of experiences and marvelous pleasures they enjoy on a daily basis. They dwell in the upper tiers of society, far above the relative squalor of the masses below. And that crystalline bubble is about to burst with the ring of the doorbell. Lights, camera, action. Seth Harwood happened to be the closest person to the door when the doorbell rang. He yelled,
"I'll get it,"
and wandered over to take a bleary glance through the window. There was a camera facing the front porch, but no one was monitoring the feed. If someone had been watching, they would have seen a figure lurking behind the man who was standing at the door. However, the host had sent all of his staff home for the evening, and now it was just Carmine and his guests. Most of them had a decent buzz going on, and none of them were even remotely prepared for the events that were about to transpire. This included Seth Harwood, the actor who opened the door. He turned around and called out,
"Hey, Terry's here. Hey, someone tell Carmine that Terry Schultz is here."
He drunkenly wobbled up the short flight of stairs to the main floor, followed closely by the new arrivals. Seth was too inebriated to notice the man who had followed Terry Schultz inside. He also failed to see the thin trickles of blood that were leaking down the side of Terry's face. There was a dazed look in Terry's eyes, and for good reason. He'd just been struck on the side of the head with a pistol shortly before he rang the doorbell. The intruder locked the door behind him and then ushered Terry up the stairs. Terry ascended the staircase on wobbly legs. There was a scream caught in his throat. He could feel the barrel of the pistol pressing into his back. As soon as he got to the top of the stairs, the man with the pistol shoved him aside for a clear shot at Seth. The discharge was deafeningly loud. Seth stumbled and collapsed onto the floor. Blood pumped out of the hole in his skull in a watery wave, rapidly pooling on the marble tiles beneath him. The intruder fired another shot into the ceiling and bellowed,
"Everyone, get on the floor. Now. Now!"
There was a moment of stunned silence. The only sound was the ringing in their ears and the hushed murmur of music in the background. Then the reality of their situation penetrated through their shock, and pandemonium broke out. Some of the guests dropped on the floor where they stood, but the rest scrambled for cover. The gunman shot a woman who was trying to open a window, and then he casually put a bullet in Terry Schultz, who was attempting to crawl his way down the stairs to escape through the front door. As Terry rolled the rest of the way down, the intruder pulled the trigger twice, aiming for a woman who was running up a spiral staircase to the second floor. The woman screeched in pain, but she continued to struggle her way to the top. She collapsed at the top of the stairs and crawled out of sight.
"I said, get your asses on the fucking floor!"
The intruder roared. The rest of them promptly complied. He pulled a handful of zip ties from the side pocket of his grimy backpack and growled,
"If anyone fucks around, I'll blow their brains out. I don't give a shit about any of you people. You understand? Not one single shit. So don't even think about trying me."
The gunman went from person to person and tied their hands behind their back. He also emptied their pockets and confiscated all of their cell phones. After he was done with this particular task, the gunman locked all the windows and closed all the blinds. When he was satisfied no one would be able to see inside, the intruder pulled a battery-powered compact driver out of his pack, followed by a paper bag full of screws. He proceeded to seal the doors shut by screwing them into their frames. When he was finished, the intruder helped himself to the bar. He poured a generous amount of vodka into a crystal glass and took a deep swallow. He gasped.
Even the good stuff tastes like battery acid to me. God, that's rough.
With his drink in one hand and his gun in the other, the intruder forced the remaining party guests to shuffle over to the corner of the room that Carmine referred to as the conversation nook. It consisted of 2 luxury couches placed directly across from each other. The couches were separated by a glass-topped table, and the area was tastefully illuminated by recessed lighting fixtures in the ceiling. When all the party guests were seated on the couches, the gunman held up his glass of vodka and said,
"Cheers, assholes." Aw, are we having fun? No? Honestly, me neither. Haven't been having any fun for a very long time.
The gunman smiled and dumped some more booze down his throat. He grimaced and tossed the glass onto the carpet beside him. He wheezed.
Ugh. Ugh. That's harsh. Ugh. Lungs and some orange juice. Am I right?
The gunman glared at his circle of captives as he swapped the magazine in his pistol. He pointed at himself and demanded,
"Does anyone know who I am?" Oh, come on, folks. Take a wild guess.
Everyone looked at each other with bright, watery eyes. No one wanted to either confirm or deny anything, because their choice might result in a one-way ticket to the pearly gates. They all stayed quiet and waited for whatever might come next.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a bit.
He grunted.
Let's see if I can name all of you shithills instead. How's that? Okay, let me see. I think we've got Carmine Montello sitting here beside me. Your producer. Terry was your business partner, right? Okay, so beside Carmine is Elizabeth McKay, and beside her is Jeremy. Jeremy Reeves. Is that right? She's an actress and you're a screenwriter. I saw you on one of those late-night talk shows. You're a funny guy, you know that? You've got a really sharp sense of humor.
Jeremy tried his best not to cower beneath the intensity of his gaze. He whispered,
"Yeah, that's me. Thanks."
And then we've got this guy sitting beside Jeremy. I don't recognize him. Who are you, my man?
The party guest in question shifted uncomfortably in his seat and stammered.
I'm not really a public figure. I'm a friend of Carmine. I work in real estate.
The gunman nodded thoughtfully and asked,
What's your name, real estate guy?
It's Ken Risdale.
He whimpered softly.
I'm not a celebrity or anything. Like I said, I sell real estate.
The gunman gave him the side eye and said,
I'm not sure if that's the whole story, but okay, sure. It doesn't matter. Either way, you're here, if you get what I mean.
Ken shrank back into the couch and whimpered.
Why are you here? Is this a robbery? None of us ever did anything to you.
Oh, that's not true at all.
The gunman sneered.
They did plenty to me. They wrecked my fucking life.
Ken blinked at him and shook his head slowly.
No.
He sputtered in a weak, wavering voice.
That didn't happen. You're not in reality right now. You have a sickness in your mind, okay? You're sick. Please listen to me.
The gunman was already on the move. He loomed over Ken and snarled.
You know what? I actually do recognize your name. I saw it on a billboard. Ken Rysdale Estates, or something like that. You're one of those greaseball developers who crank out subdivisions full of shitty McMansions. You buy up a shitload of farmland and then you slap together a bunch of cookie-cutter houses that fall apart before the mortgage gets paid off. And you get filthy fucking rich while you do it. You people are utter trash. Did you know that?
Ken shook his head again and blubbered.
I've never harmed you or bothered you in any way, shape, or form. This is the first time I've laid eyes on you, for Christ's sake. You're doing a bad thing right now, mister. You're sick. You need help.
The intruder lashed out and hit Ken in the face with the barrel of his pistol. Everyone gasped at the flat, meaty thud as the barrel bounced off Ken's cheekbone. His skin split open, and blood ran freely over his jawline, dripping onto his shirt in drops and splatters. Ken gaped at the intruder in shock. He stared back at his prisoner and murmured,
That hurts, doesn't it? I've got 50 more lined up and ready to rock, so keep your stupid mouth shut. You think I'm sick? Me? I'm the only sane person in this whole room. You people are sick, not me.
The intruder moved on to the last person on the couch and regarded him with a grimace of distaste.
Speaking of low-life pieces of garbage, here's a prime specimen, a corporate lawyer. How are you, Theodore? You don't look so good. Feeling a bit tight in the chest, are ya?
He poked the ashen-faced man in the chest with the pistol and grinned.
Come on, Ted. Have yourself a heart attack. It's okay, man. Just let go and waddle your ass over to the other side. Do the world a favor and stop breathing.
Leave me alone,
Ted stammered. His broad, quivering face was wet with tears.
This is crazy. You're fucking crazy.
There's that C word again.
The gunman interjected.
Didn't we already go over this, Ted? I'm not crazy. You know exactly who the fuck I am. Come on, say my name. Say it loud.
Ted looked up at him mutely, his lips drawn together in a tight little line. The intruder chuckled.
You'd rather take your chances with a crazy guy than say it out loud. Holy fucking shit. Okie doke then. How about this?
He pulled something out of his hip pocket and flicked it open. It was a spring-loaded knife with a 5-inch blade. It looked wickedly sharp. Ted's eyes zeroed in on the glistening business end of the knife. He cowered back as far as possible into the couch and squealed.
Don't stab me!
The intruder crooned.
Just a piglet.
And he jabbed the tip of the blade into Ted's meaty thigh. The lawyer screamed at the top of his lungs, setting off a chorus of horrified wailing from the other hostages. One of them heaved himself to his feet, his face distorted into a mask of terrified determination. He found himself staring into the barrel of the pistol, and he froze like a statue.
What do you think you're doing, sir?
The intruder asked calmly.
Were you about to fuck around? What did I say about fucking around?
The would-be hero took a shuffling step back and croaked.
I wasn't doing anything. I just wanted you to stop, okay? Don't hurt anyone, just stop it, man, please.
No. Sit down and shut up.
He turned his attention back to Ted, the lawyer, and snorted.
Damn, that leg is bleeding like a bastard. Did I poke an artery? I can't remember exactly, but I think there might be an artery there.
Ted looked like he was ready to faint. He whimpered.
I have a wife, I got kids, please don't kill me, for God's sake, don't do it, don't.
The intruder leveled his pistol dead center in the lawyer's forehead, his eyes glinting in the muted lighting.
What's my name?
He whispered.
Say my fucking name, Ted. Say it.
The young woman who was sitting beside the would-be hero stomped her feet and shrieked.
Stop it, don't hurt him anymore. Everyone's scared to say anything, okay? You told us that you said that we can't.
She trailed off, her face a crumpled Kleenex smeared with dripping makeup, and she gave Carmine an uncertain look. He very slightly shook his head no in return.
He said you can't do what exactly?
The gunman asked quietly. He was still staring at Ted. His finger was on the trigger. The young woman cleared her throat and croaked.
I don't know. I don't know.
The intruder turned and favored her with a mummified corpse of a smile. He said,
Never mind what anyone else told you. They're not in charge here. I am. Me, the guy with the gun. Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Carmine glared at her and hissed.
Carla, shut up. Stop talking.
No, and fucking no.
The intruder corrected in a sharp tone.
You don't make the rules here, partner. She can say whatever she wants.
He gave the terrified girl a stern look and said,
Go on, it's for the best.
He told us to never mention your name.
She wheezed, and a fresh batch of hot, salty tears started running down her face. Carmine and Ted, the lawyer, both groaned out loud at the same time. Carmine's face flushed a deep, ugly red. He uttered a guttural curse under his breath and gritted his teeth.
And who said that?
The intruder prodded.
Who told you to never mention my name?
The girl shook her head violently and started to sob. The intruder growled.
Tell me who said that and tell me why.
She clenched her lips together in a tight line and shook her head again. The gunman gave her a long, considering look, and then he hit Ted with the pistol. Ted flopped back onto the couch with a strangled groan.
It doesn't sound like in the movies, does it?
The intruder murmured.
There's no big, dramatic bang when you hit someone in real life, but a good, hard slap across the face. That's different. Here, I'll show you.
He shoved the knife back into his pocket and held up his hand for everyone to see. He then proceeded to whirl around and deliver a resounding slap across Ted's jawline. The sound of the impact echoed off the walls. The lawyer immediately slumped over and let out a gurgling snore. The intruder looked around at his horrified audience and he asked,
Do you get it now? This is real, folks. No lights, no cameras, no microphones. This blood is real. I'm real. So wipe that stupid look off your faces and wake up.
He looked over at Carla and gave her a sly wink, as if they were about to share some particular juicy bit of gossip. He said,
It was Ted over here, wasn't it? I know it was Ted. Just give me a yes or no, Carla. You don't have a choice.
She sniffled.
Yes, it was Ted. We were told to never mention your name, not even in private. He said they would come after us for breaching our non-disclosure agreement.
Carmine twisted in his seat and shouted,
Oh, you stupid bitch! You just fucked us, you know that?
The gunman barked.
Stuff a sock in it. You already screwed yourselves a while ago. It just took a little time to catch up with you. That's all. Stop pointing fingers and admit you fucked up.
He turned back to the young woman and gave her a puzzling look.
You know, I don't recognize you either. Are you an actress or something?
She sniffled.
I'm not. Well, yes, I'm an actress, but I've been working as a production assistant. You know, just an assistant.
He raised an eyebrow and said,
A production assistant got invited to a gathering like this? With these people? Why?
The intruder let the question hang in the air. He turned to the man who tried to sneak up behind him and asked,
How about you, Mr. Hero? Are you the key grip or something? What's your story?
The man looked down in his lap and muttered,
My name's Trent Young. I'm a cinematographer.
The intruder waved a dismissive hand and said,
I'm just gonna refer to you as Mr. Hero because I'm an asshole. Anyway, last but definitely not least, we have the esteemed director, Ron Kurze. Director, producer, visionary, all that jazz. You make good movies, sir. You really do. You're kind of a dickhead, though, aren't you?
I have nothing to say to that.
Ron answered carefully. He was striving to look neutral, but he was sweating in the air conditioning. He hesitated, then added,
What do you want from us?
I want my life back.
The intruder snapped.
But that's not going to happen, is it? So now we're going to do this instead.
He looked around with a frown of concentration and muttered,
Okay, so I've got, let's see, 8 of you sitting here. There's one upstairs, and there's me. That makes 10 of us in total.
He chuckled and mused to himself.
If I could write a story about what's happening here tonight, I'd call it 10 Little Scumbags. Do you get it? You know, like that Agatha Christie novel with the really off-color title? What? Nobody gets it? Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Who the hell is reading Agatha Christie these days? Am I right?
Ronald swallowed a lump in his throat and repeated,
What do you want from us? Why are you here?
The intruder stood there and looked down at him with a smooth, blank expression, not talking, hardly even blinking. He stood there and stared at him, and then took a long, measured breath and leaned in close. Quietly, he said,
The publisher ended up changing the name of the book to And Then There Were None. And I guess that's your answer, Mr. Kurze.
This is insane.
Ron sputtered.
Come on, don't pretend this isn't completely insane. You need to stop this right now before...
The director's words faltered in his mouth. The look in the intruder's eyes was murky and strange. There wasn't any light glimmering behind that flat, hopeless gaze. There was only darkness. The intruder murmured,
Oh, hell no. It's too late to stop.
Ron shook his head and breathed.
That's not true. Listen to me, okay? You don't have to do this. We'll get you some help.
The intruder abruptly hauled off and punched Ron in the stomach, making him double over with a strangled oof. He gave the wheezing director a feral smile and said,
It's way too late to stop. I don't gotta listen to you, champ. I don't gotta listen to fucking nobody, and that's the truth. So fuck you and fuck me, and fuck the rest of them too. There's no stopping, my man. We're heading towards the end of the line.
Ron took in a tortured breath and forced himself to sit up straight. He groaned.
Why are you doing this? What's the point you're trying to make here?
The intruder stopped smiling. For a few seconds, he looked like a frightened child, alone and lost in the wilderness. He took a deep, shuddering breath and said,
There's no point, Ron. The time for arguments is long gone. I'm doing this because you killed me, you son of a bitch. You people destroyed my life, and now I'm gonna return the favor.
The intruder abruptly walked away from his hostages and headed for the spiral staircase. As soon as he was gone, Carmine hissed,
Carla, run to my office and call 911. Quick, before he comes back. Go!
Carla blinked back her tears and sniffled.
How? My hands are tied behind my back.
Carmine snarled.
Grab a pencil with your teeth and press the buttons, dumbass. Go on, hurry up.
Elizabeth McKay glared at him and spoke up for the first time since the beginning of their horrifying ordeal. She said,
"Why don't you do it, Carmine? I mean, it's your house, isn't it? As far as I'm concerned, it's your fault this nutcase got inside. Where's your security team?"
Carmine made a rude noise with his lips and sputtered.
What? My security team? I'm not like Steven Spielberg over here, Liz. I don't have a security team. I can't afford that shit. Come on.
Elizabeth muttered.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit, but whatever. We can talk about that later. Go call the cops.
The producer gave her a look of disbelief and said,
Hell no. She's the idiot who couldn't keep her mouth shut, not me. Carla, why are you still sitting there? Get going, for Christ's sake. What are you waiting for?
Ted opened his eyes and let out a soft groan. The side of his face was swelling up rapidly, making him look like some kind of grotesque half-man, half-chipmunk hybrid. He moaned.
Oh, my jaw hurts. It hurts to talk.
Carmine coldly replied.
Then stop talking.
And turned back to Carla. He jerked his head in the direction of the office and hissed.
I'm not asking over here, sweetie. I'm telling. Get up and get moving.
2 gunshots suddenly boomed out of the second floor. Everyone jumped to their seats. They were followed by a 3rd shot, and then there was silence again.
Who was it?
Carla whispered.
Was it Grace? I think she ran upstairs when he started shooting. I think he just killed her.
Carmine snorted.
Who cares? He's up there and not down here, so get off your ass and make the fucking call.
Elizabeth bumped him aggressively with her shoulder and sputtered.
Ugh! Eat a bag of shit, Carmine! You're an asshole! Did you know that?
The producer glared at her and said,
You don't get ahead in this business by being nice, Liz. You, of all people, should know that.
Elizabeth's eyes smoldered with a deep, long-standard animosity. She purred.
Let me tell you something, Carmine. If I get out of this alive, I'm going to spill the beans on you. And I'm not talking about what happened right now. I mean all of it. The whole shebang.
Carmine's entire head flushed an ugly shade of crimson. He looked away from her and muttered,
You better watch your mouth, Liz. Who the hell do you think you are? Hey, if you're so full of piss and vinegar, maybe you should make the call. Go ahead.
Ken thumped his foot on the floor to get everyone's attention. He jerked his head at the stairs and whispered,
He's coming back, be quiet.
They all watched with bated breath as the gunman ambled down the spiral staircase, his pistol dangling at his side. He was cradling something in his other arm. It was a gold-plated sculpture of a figure holding some kind of stringed instrument. Looking at peace and smiling at nothing in particular. He stopped in their midst and announced,
And then there were 9.
He saw the disgusted expression on their faces and added,
Just some gallows humor, folks. Gotta lighten the mood every now and then, right?
Carla made a soft choking noise in her throat. She quivered.
Why did you kill Gracie? She was one of the nicest people I've ever known.
Because she was here.
The gunman said stiffly.
I gotta say, you have a lot of really cool shit lying around, Carmine. How much is this thing worth?
Reluctantly, Carmine answered.
Maybe $4,000 or so? I don't know for sure. The market value on stuff like that goes up and down.
I'm holding a $4,000 knickknack.
The intruder mused.
You just have it sitting on the table beside your bed, getting all dusty and shit. Is this a Hindu deity? You don't really strike me as a spiritual guy.
I'm not religious.
Carmine mumbled.
She's the goddess of creativity, so it seemed appropriate.
The gunman plunked the sculpture down on the coffee table and scornfully shook his head.
So, you think you're creative, do ya? That's fucking funny, my man. Ha ha ha. You've never created a goddamn thing, and that's the truth. Your company is just a glorified bank. You finance other people's work in exchange for a big slice of the profits. I failed to see how that makes you an artist, unless you were talking about being a rip-off artist, because that's exactly what you did. You ripped me off. You used my intellectual property and made tens of millions of dollars. And what do I get? Nothing. Nada. Not a single dime.
He poked himself in the chest and said,
I'm the one who creates, not you. I should have this overpriced paperweight sitting on my table, not you. But that's not how it works. People like me, we don't even have a bed, let alone a fucking nightstand. Nope. No gold statue for me. That's not how it worked out. You know what really happened?
Carmine wisely kept silent. The intruder gave him a considering look and said,
I'll tell you what really happened. I wake up one morning and see a DM from someone who's a fan of my work. I mean, I don't really have a ton of fans or anything, but they do exist. Anyway, they sent me a link to a movie trailer on YouTube. I watched the trailer and said, what the fuck is this? Because the plot seems to be an awful like one of my short stories. Do you want to guess what happened next?
His hostages remained silent. The intruder smiled at all of them in turn, his nicotine-stained grin crackling with a deadly fury.
At first, I was in denial, as I'm sure you can imagine. I couldn't believe my own eyes. I mean, surely, fucking surely, this wasn't happening, right? How would a Hollywood movie studio ever become aware of my work in the first place? I wasn't famous. I wasn't even well known. I was just another self-published idiot who occasionally does some work online. It didn't make any sense. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
He paused for a moment to stare at Carmine, who avoided his eyes and shifted nervously in his seat. The intruder shook his head at him and continued.
When this shitstorm hit the fan, I was working as a janitor in a factory. I was making minimum wage, mopping floors and scrubbing toilets. To be very frank, it was a bad place to work, and a lot of the folks who work there, they were bad too. Bad, bitter, shitty fucking people. Every now and then, someone would finger paint the toilet stall with their own shit. I wished I was making this up, but I'm not. Sometimes the shit graffiti would say something offensive about me. The janitor. Can you imagine that? No, I don't think you can. You don't have any imagination. You're as dull as a butter knife, Carmine. Dull and greedy and fucking useless. Anyway,
he sighed.
I was pretty fucking broke. Minimum wage is fuck all. That money would have changed my life completely. Not only that, but think of the doors it would open. If I had a screenwriting credit for a big budget movie, well, that's a hell of a thing to have on your resume. Most writers would kill for something like that. It basically never happens. I mean, even if I had a really good literary agent, it would still be a 1 in a million chance.
The intruder fell silent. He stared at the walls for a while, and then he abruptly whirled around and headed for the bar. He poured himself another glass of vodka and called out,
Here's the thing, folks. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a manager, a publicist, none of that shit. I was just floating around by myself on the fringes, a really small fish in a giant ocean. I was minding my own business like a good little fishy, scrubbing my toilets and selling maybe 15 books a month online. Don't get me wrong, it fucking sucked, but at least it was something. You get me? It wasn't a good life. Hell, it was hardly even adequate, to be honest, but it was something. It was better than nothing at all.
The intruder marched back to the conversation nook with his drink in hand, his eyes watering from the booze he poured down his throat at the bar. He raised his glass and said,
"A toast to our dreams. Beautiful, fragile dreams. They only become reality for the rich and powerful, because those fuckers have the cash to make it happen, and they also have a team of lawyers. Isn't that right, Theodore?"
Ted made a small sound in his throat, and he began to tremble all over. Everyone could feel a thundercloud of explosive tension building in the air. The other hostages looked at Ted with wide eyes and racing hearts. He was going to be next. The intruder stopped in front of him and drawled,
"Theodore. You're not Ted when you sign a threatening email, are you? No, sir. You go by Theodore when you're out for blood."
I didn't do anything wrong.
Ted whimpered.
I was doing my job. It was nothing personal.
The intruder threw his head back and unleashed a volley of furious laughter at the ceiling. He took another swallow of the vodka and gasped.
Nothing personal. Don't you remember sending me that email on Christmas Eve? You were pretty hot under the collar when you sent that baby along, weren't ya? Christ almighty, the thing was friggin' 10 pages long. You wrote an essay about how much I'd regret my actions if I didn't disappear. Man, you were mad as fuck, weren't you? Why is that, Theodore? Is it because you knew I was right?
Ted stammered.
I didn't mean... Yeah, I did send that email, but you threatened us first. I sent a very clear and professional response to your baseless claims. Maybe my tone was a bit firm, I suppose, but frankly, you're lucky I didn't launch a lawsuit on my own. You have no right to...
The intruder kicked the couch between Ted's legs and screamed.
You better shut the fuck up, douchebag. What did you just say to me? Baseless? Where the hell have you been for the past 20 minutes? The cat's already out of the bag, moron. We all know it happened. For crying out loud, freaking Jeremy over here didn't even bother to change the name of the antagonist. What are you, a fucking robot? Look at you. Your shit's bleeding all over the place and your hands are tied behind your back. This is where you're at right now, and you're still coughing up some pre-recorded lawyer talk. Fucking incredible.
Carmine was looking at Ted with narrowed eyes. He rumbled.
What's he talking about? You didn't say anything about an email, and you responded to him without consulting me first?
A slow smile spread across the intruder's face. He said,
I think someone was overstepping their bounds. Tell him what happened, Theodore. Tell him everything, or I'll break your fucking teeth.
Ted crumpled back into the couch. Looking diminished and immensely miserable, he muttered,
We got an email from this guy about a year after we first heard from his lawyer. He said he didn't get confirmation that everyone was made aware of the incident. He go after us on social media with his accusations.
Carmine's face was becoming redder by the second. Through gritted teeth, he snarled,
Do you know what kind of shitstorm this could have brought down on my head? Why didn't you tell me? This goes for you too, Ron. You never said a single word to me about this shit.
He told me I'm a nobody.
The intruder interjected. His angry smile abruptly collapsed, leaving a vacant, haunted look in its wake.
He said I'm delusional. He wrote 10 pages of bullshit to explain why I was wrong. And then he threatened to fuck up whatever was left of my existence if I didn't go away. I sat there at my kitchen table on Christmas Eve and read this pompous horseshit while my wife tried to pretend everything was normal. You know, sort of buzzing around the house and moving the ornaments around, fucking with the tree, just pretending to be busy. Just trying to ignore me as I sat there getting angrier and angrier. Just trying her goddamnedest to make Christmas happen. And then I jumped up and I threw my phone across the room and I yelled, "You're full of shit and you know it, motherfucker!"
The gunman paused and looked around the room with a bewildered expression, as if he wasn't sure where he was anymore. He let out a shaky breath and said,
"My wife, she turns to me with tears in her eyes and she yells back, 'Why can't you just let it go? I can't take this anymore. Just fucking let it go and move on.'"
The gunman took another deep drink and gasped at the burning in his throat. He motioned to Ted with the pistol and said,
"You were scared people would find out. The audience, the people who lined up to watch Carmine's crappy movies. Can you imagine the response if I went public? People love to hate the players in Hollywood. No matter how much they adore you, they're always secretly waiting for an excuse to shove you off your pedestal. The rest of you dumb shits might not understand this, but Ted understands it just fine. He knows the power of public opinion."
He pointed the gun at Ted and asked,
"What's your job, Theodore? What does Carmine's company employ you to do?"
Ted gave the intruder an uncertain look and said,
I'm the head of their legal team."
"Yeah, sure."
The intruder agreed.
"But what is your specific function? What do you do?"
Ted blinked at him and said nothing. It was obvious he was having difficulty moving his jaw. The left side of his face looked like a Halloween mask. It was tacky with drying blood and his cheeks was swollen to balloon-like proportions. The stab wound in his inner thigh was no longer bleeding, but it throbbed with a fiery heat that made him want to pass out. He took in a deep, shuddering breath and said,
I don't know what you want me to say."
The intruder kicked the couch again and yelled,
"The truth, asshole. Your job is to protect the company from losing money. That's what you do. Being called out for stealing from a working man, that wouldn't look very good. Something like that has the potential to hurt ticket sales and drain their bottom line."
Ted licked his lips and muttered,
It could be a problem, yes, but I investigated your claims and they were they weren't true. I answered all of them in great detail."
The intruder's eyes were wide as saucers. His breath was puffing in and out of his chest in grunts and snorts. He rasped,
"You stupid motherfucker. Drop the innocent act for Christ's sake. You thought I was gonna crawl into the sewer and never return, didn't you? But then I came back and you got mad because I wasn't supposed to do that."
Carmine interjected,
"I want to see the response you got from Ted. Do you have access to email on your phone?"
The intruder winced at the sound of his voice. He bent down to look at Carmine directly in the eye and said,
"I don't have to show you shit motherfucking all, my man. The time for verifying and examining the evidence, that time is long gone. Just be quiet and let me say what I have to say."
He pointed at the director and ruefully shook his head.
"I didn't think Ron even knew, but apparently he did, and he just didn't care. You're a special kind of asshole. Did you know that? You talk all that shit online about how you're a regular, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, and it's a bunch of lies. You're another pampered shitbag in the back of a limousine. You direct movies about the struggles of regular people, but I doubt you even know any regular people. You're 10 times worse than Theodore over there, because he doesn't try to hide his true identity. He's a vulture, and he knows it. You, however, you live entirely up your own ass. We have absolutely nothing in common, you and I. You live up in the clouds. Hell, you wouldn't even notice one of us regular people. Not unless we took you hostage and forced you to notice.
Carmine appeared to not even be aware of the exchange between the intruder and Ron Kersley. He was too busy glaring at the head of his legal department, who suddenly yelled,
God damn it, Ted. Why didn't you come to me when you got the email? I would have just cut him a deal for Christ's sake. What would it cost? 20 grand? Maybe 40? Who gives a shit? Now look at us, you goddamn idiot. You stupid son of a...
Blam! The shot was deafening in the narrow corner of the room. A chunk of Carmine's head sprayed on the walls behind him, followed immediately by a crimson gush of blood. He choked out a gurgling groan and fell sideways. His head landed in Elizabeth's lap. She screamed and jumped up from the couch, only to be immediately shoved back down by the intruder. She fell on top of Carmine and squirmed away, crowding up against Jeremy with an expression of hysterical disgust. The gunman roared.
Nobody gets up from the fucking couch. Don't even think about it.
The actress shrieked back.
Fuck you! He was bleeding on me! His blood is all over my legs!
The intruder spat.
I don't care if you're drowning in it, lady. You keep your ass on that cushion.
This isn't fair.
Elizabeth stammered and she started to cry.
I didn't do anything to you! I starred in a movie. I got a paycheck. That's it. That's all I did.
The intruder took another big gulp of vodka and wandered away into the middle of the room. He looked around at the opulence of his surroundings with a mixture of contempt and wonder.
Stop whining about it.
He called over his shoulder.
I don't care about you.
Get him off the couch! Get him away from me!
The gunman stormed back to the conversation nook and pulled the body off the couch. He tucked his firearm in his waistband and dragged Carmine to the other side of the room.
And then there were 8.
He croaked.
Tell me something, Ron. Why are you people gathered here tonight? It seems like a coincidence that everyone here worked on the same movie. It's a bit late for a rap party. So, what's the occasion?
A fleeting look passed between the remaining hostages. Ron licked his lips and answered with a question of his own.
How did you find this place? Carmine's address isn't public knowledge.
Oh, I've been doing my research.
The intruder said cryptically, and he smiled.
I guess it's time for the second act of my story. That's what I do, isn't it? I tell stories. I tell them, and you steal them. Ha! Isn't that right, Mr. Kurze?
No.
Ron answered calmly.
That isn't right at all. Go ahead and tell your story, sir.
Here goes nothing.
The intruder chirped brightly.
We'll call this Act 2, the aftermath. Anyway, after Ted sent me that charming email on Christmas Eve, I gave up on trying to contact anyone. I was worried I'd have to defend myself against you shitty bastards in a libel suit, and I was terrified I'd lose. I didn't have a lawyer anymore, so I was pretty much fucked. I guess I kind of plunged into a downward spiral. I started drinking again. I couldn't sleep without it. I didn't care about anything. All I could think about was the theft of my work. Writing takes a lot of time and concentration. You don't just shit out a novel in a month and call it good. Research, edits, rewrites, more edits. It never ends. On top of all of that, you still gotta work and make ends meet. I kept going through the motions for a while, but it wasn't good anymore. I couldn't lose myself in the story. The magic was gone. And that really fucked me up. Losing the ability to slip away into my own imagination. That was even worse than getting ripped off. It was almost like losing my hand or something. I wasn't whole anymore. I got frustrated and then I got angry. I started being an asshole to everyone around me at all times. No chill, as the kids say. No chill at all. I hated everything, but I hated myself the most. I was almost at my breaking point. And then I quit my job.
Carla softly asked,
What happened? Why?
The intruder removed his filthy baseball cap and ran a hand through his balding hair. He murmured,
Well, I used to be a nobody with a dream, and then I was just a nobody. I couldn't pretend to care anymore. I gave them 2 weeks' notice, and that was that. I told the wife I would look for another job, but I didn't. She tried her best to be understanding, but how long is that shit supposed to go on? When she started to get on my case about it, I told her, I'll devote all my time to writing and I'll make it work, I promise. But promises for me apparently don't mean jack shit, because that didn't happen either. I just sort of wandered around and brooded all day.
He ran his hand over his thinning hair again and favored his captive audience with a crooked smile. He said,
Look, I've got a record, okay? Drugs, petty theft, some shit like that. Poor people's crimes. I paid my dues, but that doesn't change anything. People always think that having a criminal record doesn't matter when you're looking for a job, but of course it does. Why take a risk on a guy like that if you can't just hire someone with a clean background? Let's face it, most people have never been arrested, let alone convicted of a crime. If you've got that kind of baggage, it limits your opportunities.
That's not fair.
Carla said quietly.
I'm sorry it's like that.
Me too.
The intruder muttered.
In my experience, the best you can hope for is temp work at a factory or a warehouse, and that isn't saying much. I remember working at this one place, a warehouse. It had a conveyor belt that was so long you couldn't even see where it started. The conveyor was jammed full of boxes at all times, every minute of the day. There was an endless line of boxes stretching as far as the eye could see. I would stack 8 of those heavy bastards on a wooden pallet, and then a guy on a forklift would take them away. I had no idea what was inside the boxes, and neither did any of my coworkers.
The intruder looked at Ron and asked,
Do you know what struck me most about that place? No one ever said my name. Not once. They just point and say, Hey, you! I was out on the floor, day after day, doing all the heavy lifting in the summer heat, but no one ever came up to me and said, Thanks for getting our shipments ready on time. No, All the praise went to the area manager, a guy who never left his air-conditioned office. He literally never stepped onto the floor in the entire time I worked there. Do you see the parallel here, folks?
The intruder was starting to shake like a leaf in his filthy sweatshirt. He pointed at Ted and hollered,
"Huh? You people somehow managed to find the one thing that was sacred to me. My stupid little ambition, my wonderful little daydream. You found it and you took it from me. I did all the heavy lifting so you could take it and make millions off my work. And what did you say when I dared to speak out? You told me I'm a nobody. A non-entity, no one, nothing at all. Well, look over here, you shitty little coward. Here I am, in the flesh."
Ted sputtered.
I didn't say that. Stop getting yourself worked up and listen to reason.
Who cares if I'm getting worked up?
The intruder demanded.
After all, I'm nobody, right? Right?
The muzzle of the pistol flashed and let out a deafening bang, and everyone screamed. Ted, of course, screamed the loudest of all of them. He fell off the couch and landed on his back, still screaming. Ted began to push himself along the floor with his good leg, gibbering nonsense words of terror as he slowly wormed his way across the carpet. The intruder stood passively and watched the lawyer's futile attempt to run for his life. His lower lip started to quiver, as if he was about to burst into tears, but his eyes were dry and hot with the fires of vengeance. They had already scorched his soul, and now the flames would also consume his enemies. Tonight, they would all burn together. The intruder grabbed Carmine's golden statue and followed after his hated nemesis. He stopped the lawyer's agonizing escape with a kick in the ribs, and Ted wailed like a child. The intruder pinned the weeping man with his knee and grunted,
"I'm real, you son of a bitch."
The statue bounced off the lawyer's forehead once, twice, and then a third time for good measure. The intruder rose to his feet and brandished the blood-splattered statue at the rest of the hostages. He screamed,
"Do you see that, cocksuckers? Huh? Do you see that shit?"
Ted was already finished, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The intruder growled like a rabid dog and battered the dying man with a primal savagery. Droplets of blood and bits of flesh splattered across the ceiling, the walls, everywhere. The intruder didn't stop until the lawyer's entire head was completely destroyed. When the intruder was finally satisfied, he dropped the statue and rolled away from the victim. He lay on his back for a few moments, panting with exertion and covered in blood. He sat up and gasped.
There's not much time left. That lady upstairs was on the phone with 911 when I shot her. The cops probably have this place surrounded by now."
Trent gave him a furious look and snapped,
You sick, twisted piece of shit! Do you imagine that was somehow justified? I hope you rot in jail forever!
The intruder clambered to his feet and snorted.
"We haven't heard from you in a while, Mr. Hero. You're gonna deliver your hero speech now? Go on, say your piece. Make it quick."
Trent grinned right back at him and said,
You've already killed the people who were directly responsible. What do you want now? Some more attention? Is that it? You want us to say your name? You don't deserve one. You're just the man with the gun. Keep hiding behind your gun, you pathetic bastard!
The intruder gave him an incredulous look. He spat.
"The gun is just a lump of metal and can't do shit unless I squeeze the trigger. Do you want to see something really dangerous?"
He stomped over to Carmine's wall-sized TV and grabbed something off the end table. It was a TV remote. The intruder seized a handful of Trent's hair and waved the remote in his face. He hissed,
"Now, this thing right here, this thing is incredibly fucking dangerous, Mr. Hero. This thing is the motherfucking A-bomb. I couldn't possibly do more damage. Not in 1,000 lifetimes.
Trent opened his mouth to reply, but he couldn't think of anything to say. At that instant, a man's voice began blaring from a bullhorn outside. The voice bellowed.
Attention! This is Sergeant Hernandez of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. In approximately 1 minute, you will receive a phone call on the landline that's registered to the homeowner. Please answer this phone call.
Yep, the cops are here.
The intruder murmured. His face was pale and drawn. That look of being lost and afraid passed over his features again like a dark shadow. Elizabeth exclaimed,
Give yourself up, for fuck's sake! It's pointless! You don't have to die tonight, and neither do the rest of us. You need help.
The intruder gave her a sharp look. He said,
I know why you all came here tonight. You came here to talk about a sequel.
No one answered him, but the guilty expressions on their face was enough. The intruder nodded to himself, a sorrowful gesture, and he shook his head.
Terry Schultz spilled the beans. You know how I got to him. I catfished the dumb old bastard with some stock photos. I actually Googled blonde bimbo stock photo and used them in my profile. Yeah, it was that easy. I tied him up and kept him locked in the trunk of his car for a while. When I finally let him out, he was more than willing to cooperate.
The gunman dug into his backpack and pulled out a script for the proposed sequel. He waved it in the air and said,
Original screenplay by Jeremy Reeves. You did this all by yourself, did ya? Or maybe you're just taking all the credit for someone else's work again. That would be par for the course, wouldn't it?
A telephone started to ring in Carmine's office. The intruder said,
Excuse me for a second,
and jogged over to answer it. The hostages strained to hear his side of the conversation. It was very brief. The intruder said,
Hello? Yeah, that's me.
He listened for a while, and then he made an impatient sound and said,
Okay, be quiet for a second. I don't have a list of demands. It's not like that. No, I'm not gonna tell you why. I'm sure you'll figure it out later. It's just something I need to do, that's all. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? No, absolutely not. You're not understanding me, officer. I don't want any of that. I'm gonna do what I need to do, and when it's over, you can go ahead and blow me to pieces. I honestly don't give a shit.
The intruder came back to the conversation nook with an irritated expression on his face. He glared at his hostages with bloodshot eyes and croaked.
The cops want to negotiate. They don't get it. I don't want money or recognition. I don't have a cause or a manifesto. I just want to kill you motherfuckers.
Let us go.
Carla squeaked in a tiny voice.
Killing us won't make it right. It'll just make you wrong.
The intruder zeroed in on her with that shell-shocked stare, and he murmured,
Why are you even here, lady? You never gave me an answer.
Carla flushed in a deep red. She muttered something inaudible and stared at the floor. The intruder nudged her leg with the foot and said,
I didn't hear you. Speak up.
Elizabeth interjected.
She was screwing Carmine. That's why she's here. He liked him young and vulnerable. That was his thing.
The intruder wrinkled his nose at Carmine's corpse.
You were sleeping with this guy? Wow. That had to be rough. Don't get me wrong, though. I get it. You do what you gotta do in this world.
Carla narrowed her eyes and barked.
I wasn't screwing him, but thanks. We're actually seeing each other for almost 6 months. We were in a relationship.
Elizabeth raised an eyebrow and asked,
Do you really think so, hun? Look, I knew Carmine for many years. Believe me, he was going to get bored and toss you out like a bag of trash. It happened to me too. It happened to a lot of us. And he didn't take no for an answer. If you said no, he'd just do what he wanted anyway. Once again, it happened to a lot of us.
And look where you are now.
Carla shot back.
I'm sorry if that happened to you, but look, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I do know one thing. I'm not a production assistant. I'm an actress, Liz. I belong in front of the camera, just like you. Everyone needs a break at some point. You got yours, didn't you? I was just trying to get mine.
Elizabeth gave her a pitying look and said,
Oh, honey, I'm sure you're a damn fine actress, but here's the problem. Carla, there's a lot of damn fine actresses out there. And if you do manage to succeed, you won't belong to yourself anymore. They'll use you up, and then they'll tear you down. When there's nothing left, they'll throw you away.
The intruder sat down on the couch beside Ken, unmindful of the blood on the cushion. He said,
There's a parasite waiting on every rung of the ladder, all the way up and all the way down. Speaking of which, I want to ask Ken here the same question. Why are you here, fella? You're not a Hollywood guy. You're a real estate tycoon, correct? Or maybe that's not the full story.
Caught in the spotlight, Ken's face rapidly drained of blood. He looked down and mumbled,
I have known Carmine since college. I'm an investor in his production company, lending him money and hoping for a good return. That's the full extent of my involvement here. It was just business.
That's a really swell thing to do, Ken.
The gunman chirped in a bright, sarcastic tone.
Helping your friends realize their dreams, that's very noble. I used to have dreams too. It was nice to have those dreams, it really was. And it would have been super helpful if I was paid for the use of those dreams. Oh, you betcha. But that's not how it played out, my man. So now we're here.
The light went on behind Ken's eyes. He said,
I'll give you $1 million if you let me walk out of that door. Hell, I'll give you $2 million. Just let me walk out of here and it's yours.
The intruder looked darkly amused by the real estate mogul's offer. He cracked a grim smile and chuckled.
What about these other people? I bet you're probably the wealthiest person here, living or dead. Are you going to offer to pay for them too?
Ken stomped his feet on the floor and shouted,
I don't care about these people. I don't even know them, for Christ's sakes. If they did something to you, go ahead and deal with them. I don't give a shit. Just let me live.
A shadow passed behind the intruder's icy gaze. He studied Ken's battered, miserable face and said,
Of course you don't care about them. They aren't fat stacks of money. They're other people. Here, come with me.
The gunman grabbed Ken by the shirt and hauled him to his feet. He ushered him down the steps to the front door and said,
Take a peek out this window and tell me what you see.
The intruder steered him in front of the door and pulled up the blinds. Ken gave him an uncertain look, and the intruder said,
Go on. Tell me what's happening out there. Here, just a second. Put this on first.
He jammed his baseball cap on Ken's head and pushed him in front of the window. A few seconds later, a sharpshooter put a round through his forehead. A splatter of red burst from the back of his skull as he fell in a shower of glass. He was dead before he hit the floor. The intruder quickly reached over and dropped the blinds again. A split second later, another shot blasted a hole through the slats and embedded itself in the staircase. He ejected the magazine of his own pistol as he hurried up the stairs, fishing another one from his pocket as he studied the dwindling ranks of his hostages. He vaguely motioned at the door with a bitter grin and announced,
"And now there are 7.
Ron twisted in his seat and glared at the intruder with a look of disgust. He sputtered,
"Do you think that was funny? Huh? Is this funny to you?"
The intruder calmly stated,
"Nothing is funny."
And he shot Ron twice in the chest. Carla screamed as the director tumbled onto the floor. The intruder grabbed him by the leg and dragged him into an open space in the living room. He bared his teeth in a furious smile and repeated,
"Nothing is funny. Not even close. In fact, everything is fucking awful."
He proceeded to punctuate his words with a series of kicks to the head and the body, ranting and raving as spittle went flying in all directions. He snarled,
"You fucked up, Ronnie. You fucked up. You all fucked up so fucking bad. You destroyed me. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my entire life. You pissed down my neck and told me it was raining, didn't ya? You fucking destroyed my life."
The intruder stopped to catch his breath, panting and wheezing, and that bitter grin was still pasted on his face. At that moment, Carmine's business line began to ring again. The intruder answered it on the 3rd ring. He gasped,
"It's still me. I'm still alive. You made a mistake. Oh, hell yeah. You definitely made a mistake. You just killed the real estate guy. Good work, dumbass."
He paused, then quickly said,
"If you come in, I'll blast the whole fucking condo sky high. I've got the doors rigged to blow, and I'm wearing a vest with... What was that? No, it's not. For Christ's sake, listen to me, man. It's not something you could ever give me. It isn't yours to give. Look, I don't think we have anything to talk about, okay? No more phone calls. Stay the fuck out until it's over."
The gunman hung up on the negotiator, and then he shot the phone off the desk. It jumped into the air with a loud pop and a spray of plastic. He closed his eyes and took in a deep breath, squeezing the pistol between his hands in a sweaty death grip. As he filled his lungs to capacity, he let it out slowly, bit by bit, and the trembling in his hands almost ceased. Not completely, but almost.
What the fuck is going on?
And a sudden curtain of tears blurred his vision. He wanted to fade away and disappear, but that wasn't possible. He was doomed to finish what he started. There simply wasn't any other course of action left. The intruder wiped his eyes with his sleeve and hurried back to the conversation, though. He briskly announced,
"It looks like we're in the final act, everyone. No more foot dragging."
The hostages looked around at each other with panic in their eyes. Carla stammered,
"Oh, what does that mean? What are you saying?"
In response, he racked the slide and loaded around into the chamber. Carla let out a whimper and started to hyperventilate. Jeremy glared at him and snapped,
"Do you understand how many lives you've completely shattered tonight? Over what? 60 grand, maybe? How long do you think that money would have lasted? The residuals aren't gonna make you rich, believe me. It isn't good money. And a screenwriting credit isn't some kind of golden ticket to fame and fortune either. You threw your life away, and for what? Why? Do you really think you were robbed of your success? Because here's the harsh reality, okay? I can almost guarantee you it wouldn't have gone anywhere. One and done, never to be repeated. How do you think you would have handled that, tough guy? Would you take your little gun and kill the entire industry? You're a fucking idiot."
The intruder gave him a bewildered look, and then he squawked,
"Oh, fuck you, jackass! You stole from me! You people make tens of millions of dollars from my fucking story, and you didn't give me anything. Not one red cent. No recognition. Not even a pat on the back. How the hell are you trying to make yourself look like the good guy right now?
Jeremy scoffed.
Do you think you're the only one who's ever been ripped off? Because it happened to me too, several times, and it sucked really bad each and every time. So I get it, man. I do. It fucking sucks. And it makes you want to light the whole fucking world on fire. But it's just another harsh reality of this business. Yeah, okay, you wrote a damn good story. So what? They're not gonna invite you into the studio and give you a job. Are you kidding me? You're an outsider. Get it? You're just another average Joe with a pinch of talent. You're not one of them, and you never will be. Do you think they want someone like you hanging around the writer's room? You don't belong there. They probably wouldn't even let you sweep the parking lot. You don't.
The look on the gunman's face made Jeremy stop talking. He loomed over the screenwriter and repeated in a strangled whisper.
I'm an outsider, an interloper, an intruder, if you will. Okay? I won't argue that. You're right. I'm not one of you soulless shithills. Fuck no. Before this happened, I was a decent person, and I don't give a shit about money or recognition. Not anymore. I don't care about starting a career either. I don't even care about dying. Just between you and me. I'm pretty sure there's no heaven or hell. There's only hope on one side and death on the other.
The screenwriter opened his mouth to say something, and the intruder promptly popped him in the chin with the left hook. Jeremy's head snapped back, and he looked up at his tormentor with a dazed expression. The intruder snapped.
Keep your mouth closed and listen. I'm talking here, not you. I'm talking about hope, fuckhead. Let me tell you about the nature of hope, okay? It's like a tiny little candle out there in the void. It's so small, you know? It's so small and it's fucking fragile. And beyond the light of the flame, there's darkness and sorrow and just nothing. Nothing at all. And then you morally bankrupt bastards. You came along and you pissed out the flame. You didn't have to do that, but you did. And now there's only the void.
Jeremy mutely shook his head. His eyes were glimmering with tears. He whispered,
I'm sorry, okay? It wasn't my fault. But I'm sorry.
The intruder prodded him in the chest with the pistol. He leaned down and breathed.
The light is gone, and now it's time to go to sleep.
Elizabeth twisted in her seat and screeched,
Oh, get fucked! It's not our fault you gave up and quit. It's not our fault you're a loser. Yeah, that's right. You're a loser. Do you want to hear another truth, you whiny little bitch? You don't have what it takes to make it in this business. You'd get eaten alive.
You're right.
The intruder agreed.
I wasn't made to swim with the sharks. I was just a dreamer with my silly little dreams, and then you destroyed them.
Elizabeth bellowed,
Your dreams can get fucked too!
And she spat in his face. The intruder wiped the frothy gob of spit off his face with the sleeve of his hooded sweatshirt. And then he suddenly loomed over her, his hand drawn back to knock her senseless. She hissed,
Don't you touch me!
And lashed out with both feet, driving both of her heels into his shins. He let out a shrill cry and stumbled back. Elizabeth screeched in triumph and bicycle kicked her legs at him in desperate intensity. By sheer accident, one of her feet knocked the gun out of his hand. It spun away in the air and disappeared beneath the opposite couch. Elizabeth screamed,
"Get him!"
and launched herself at the gunman like a battering ram. Her head slammed into his stomach and they both fell onto the coffee table, smashing the glass top into 1,000 glittering shards. He threw her aside and tried to stand up, but he was booted back to the floor by Trent, who immediately lost his balance and tripped over the table. He rolled across the broken glass and flopped on top of the intruder, pinning him down with his body weight. Trent shouted,
"Jump on him! Hold him down!"
Jeremy leaned forward in his seat and twisted his arms against the rigid grasp of the zip tie, fighting against it with all of his strength. There was a horrible flare of pain as his skin tore open beneath the plastic teeth, and then the zip tie snapped in half. He screamed,
"My hands are free!"
and he jumped onto the intruder's back, pummeling him with arms that were completely numb from lack of circulation. Carla and Elizabeth both dropped their weight across the intruder's flailing legs. He roared in fury and screamed like a snake beneath them. The intruder managed to heave himself onto his side, and Trent squealed.
"He got me!"
He squirmed away from the brawl with blood pouring from a deep cut across his abdomen. The intruder twisted around with a wiry strength and slashed Jeremy across the neck. The screenwriter clasped a hand across the wound and jumped to his feet. He was slashed across the leg as he tried to run for the front door, causing him to fall over the couch and execute a clumsy somersault in the process. His neck was spurting blood beneath his hand. Elizabeth and Carla rolled away from the deadly fury of the knife. They cowered against the couch and begged for mercy. The intruder gasped.
You almost had me.
And he hauled himself to his feet. Elizabeth had given him a hairline fracture in his shin, but he could still hobble along faster than Jeremy. He was bleeding like a fountain as he drunkenly zigzagged his way to the door. The intruder caught up to him at the top of the stairs, and he shoved Jeremy headfirst down the staircase. His neck snapped like a pencil on impact. He watched his own blood flow across the marble tiles as his vision faded to black. The intruder came limping back with his mouth twisted in a horrible grin. He headed straight for Trent, who was writhing around on the floor with his guts bulging from his wound. The intruder leaned over him and grunted.
End of scene. Time to shut her down.
The young man's cries for help turned into a dreadful gagging sound as the intruder pushed his knife into his neck. Trent stared up at him with unbelieving eyes, his blood gushing into the carpet in a stream. Within a few seconds, his gaze turned murky and dull, and then he was staring at nothing at all. Outside the condo, the voice of the bullhorn was shouting for the intruder to reconnect the phone. It seemed strangely muted and distant, as if the world outside was no longer attached to the horrible events that were unfolding inside the condo. The intruder looked over at Elizabeth and Carla and spat a wad of bloody mucus on the carpet. He wheezed.
And then there were 3. Thank fuck, it's almost over.
Elizabeth closed her eyes tightly and said,
"Don't give yourself up to the cops. Don't you dare. Just blow your brains out and remove yourself from this world, you piece of shit!"
The intruder softly answered.
That's the plan. I guess this isn't worth much, but I don't think you deserve any of this. I'm sorry you were here.
What about me?
Elizabeth demanded.
I didn't know you existed until after the trailer was released. I thought what they did was really shitty, and I wasn't the only one.
His mouth twisted into a bitter little smirk. He said,
Thoughts and prayers, huh? You're a famous celebrity, correct? You and the rest of them. You could have used your influence to pressure the studio into doing the right thing. What were they gonna do? Take the entire cast and crew to court? I doubt it. But you didn't stick up for me, did you? You thought to yourself, geez, that sucks, and that's as far as it went. And that's exactly the problem here, Liz. No one gives a shit about anyone else. Me, me, me. That's all I ever hear these days. I turn on the TV, I listen to the radio, I go online, and there it is. Me, me, me. That's all there is anymore. I don't want to live in a world like that. If we're all looking out for number one out there, what's the point of civilization?
Then what are you doing right now?
Elizabeth demanded.
You murdered all these people tonight because you didn't get what you wanted? How is that not selfish?
The intruder muttered,
"When in Rome."
And he winced as he crouched down to fish the pistol out from beneath the couch. As he dropped out of view, Elizabeth uttered an anguished scream and ran for the window. At the same time, something smashed through the window from outside and bounced off the floor. It was a flashbang grenade, and it detonated directly in her screeching face. There was a tremendous boom and a brilliant flash of light. Elizabeth's brain was almost jellified by the concussive force of the blast, and her once beautiful features were scorched to the bone. She fell backwards and dropped like a brick to the floor. Carla found herself curled up on the floor with a dreadful buzzing in her skull. She shouted for help, but she could barely hear her own voice. The intruder staggered into view and shouted something, but his words were lost beneath the ringing in her ears. Carla tried to get up, but she was overwhelmed by a wave of nausea. Her head was aching like a rotten tooth, and her vision was scrambled from the glare of the flashbang. She squinted at the intruder's blurry form, and she saw the pistol in his hand. Carla struggled against the zip tie that bound her hands together, and she yelled,
Don't do it. Just put it down and let them take you away.
Both of the entrances were busted down at the same time, and the SWAT team came pouring in from either side. The intruder turned to face them and raised his pistol. Carla watched as his body was riddled by a hail of bullets. When the shouting finally stopped, Carla stumbled across the gore-smeared carpet and fell to her knees beside him. The police were shouting orders at her, but she couldn't hear them. Her entire world had shrunken down to a narrow view of the intruder, twitching like a fish out of water in a pool of his own blood. The intruder wasn't holding a pistol. It was still lost somewhere beneath the couch. He was holding the TV remote. He let it fall from his hand and he mouthed a single word as the light faded from his eyes.
Boom,
he said, and then he was gone. Carla was abruptly dragged to her feet by a set of clutching, uncaring hands. She let out an anguished scream and fought against them, dragging her heels across the floor as they pulled her outside. She was the sole survivor, the last little scumbag, and she couldn't bear to leave the others behind. Carla was still screaming when they loaded her into an ambulance. She screamed until she was sedated, and then she silently screamed in her nightmares. And for the rest of her days, beneath the sun, a part of her would always be screaming. Because the void awaits us all, and when hope is extinguished, the shadows will consume you. It's cold in there, my friends, and it's dark. So very, very dark.
This has been a Morbid Forest production, and on this week's episode you've heard 10 Little Scumbags, written by T.W. Grim, with narration by Ron Hyatt as your narrator, Kyle Bone as Seth, Phoenix Fire as the intruder, Pelle Frid as Ted, Shawn Moreau as Ken, KJ Burbank as Trent, Matthew Trevino as Carmine, Jorge Betancourt as Ron, Sean Conkling-Methot as Jeremy, Devyn Boer as Carla, Naomi Richards as Elizabeth, and Havish Ravipati as Sergeant Hernandez. Story editing and audio production by Naomi Richards. Our theme music this season is The Shadows by Nandi Bushhill. Music and sound effects provided by Epidemic Sound. And don't forget, travelers, Our Halloween series, Inkwell Haven, is still going strong through the month of October. Make sure you're checking our socials for clues on where the next stop will be and which podcast is hosting it. And while you're remembering, don't forget to grab a copy of T.W. Grim's new book, Bonesaw Vic's Cryptozoological Gardens. If you love goofy misfits and cryptids with a sprinkle of crime, then this is the book for you. I'll leave a link down in the show notes. Follow us on X or Twitter if you're old school, Instagram, Discord, Threads, and Tumblr to stay up to date on all the happenings within the forest. Interested in more morsels of the forest? Then join our Patreon. As a faithful traveler, you'll receive exclusive access to ad-free episodes, early releases, and bonus content for only $3 a month. That's patreon.com/The Morbid Forest. Love what you're hearing? Then leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Reviews and ratings help us reach more travelers out there, just like you. And with that, we'll see you next week, travelers, on The Morbid Forest.